Welcome, everybody, to the Tack Box Podcast, episode 2 this week. Last week, we talked about finding your breed of puppy, and this week, we are going to dive into what happens when you find your breed. How do you purchase a puppy in person or online? I am your host, Tyson Wald, and I am joined by my co host, Dale Martenson. How are you doing today, Dale?
Man, I'm good, Tyson. How are you?
I'm excited to be back for episode 2. That's how I'm doing. I'm doing fantastic this week. I'm excited that we get to bring another episode here. We had some good feedback on episode 1, so I'm ready to jump in.
And it's such a great topic, how to get your puppy. Well, I mean, whether it's a pet puppy or if it's going to be a performance dog or a hunting dog or a show dog, those are all it's good information because that is something that has changed dramatically.
Yeah, so let's talk about that and how it's changed throughout the years because I know, in the 90s, maybe early 2000s when I was younger and it was like you'd pick up the newspaper on Sunday and go through the classifieds and look for
Absolutely.
pets, and now nobody really does a newspaper anymore. Everything's digital. So in today's world, how does one even go about finding a breeder or somebody that has a puppy for sale?
Okay, so first off, we're going to go ahead. We've got our breed picked out, and we know we're going to start to look, and then we have to really decide what do we want to do with this dog. What's our goal? Are we going to breed it? Is this just going to be a family dog? If you get a dog for competition, then for like breeding classes to showing, then that has to be a dog on an open registration. But if you're buying a dog just for performance activities and not to be bred, then you can, and you're going to have it spayed or neutered, then you can get what they call a limited registration. That's you have to know that up front because you want to know what you're wanting, your long-term 10-year plan is for this dog, the type of registration you need, because the type of registration you get at the moment of purchase is about 99% the time the registration you're going to get for the lifetime of the dog. The next thing is there are a multitude of registries that you can go online. They'll have CKC, WKC, APRI, all of those stuff. Unless it is an American Kennel Club registered dog, it does not come from a DNA'd pedigree. And a lot of those registrations might not be worth the paper they're printed on. You could perhaps even find a dog and get papers with some of those types of registrations. So you want to make sure you're getting an American Kennel Club registered dog. And then of course you can, because that will go ahead and you can have whether your dog is from hunting dogs or performance dogs or show dogs, you'll have all of that documented lineage through now. So, where did you went and met Barb at the bird store. So that was you met somebody in person. So how have you gone about meeting other people online, and what have your adventures been on doing that?
Well, I think through that, yes, I did it in person, but I've had throughout the last few years or just like we mentioned at the beginning, you looked in the newspaper. Well, newspaper's not a thing anymore. Then comes along Craigslist, Facebook. Well, those things are so full of scams and ads anymore that you don't even know when you're talking to a real person. Luckily, I mean, realistically for me, I kind of gave up on finding an animal. I wasn't you when it was in the paper on Sunday, you'd browse and it would almost be one of those situations where you saw something and decided I want to have that. And now I think we're in the world where you decide you want to have something and you have to seek it out. So I so happened to run across it in person, and it worked out great. But I think that 99% of the time that's probably not going to happen, and you're probably going to have to seek out the opportunity. Now, I I got into Japanese chin by running into it in person, but I've also seeked it out outside of that, outside of person, because what do I want for my next thing? Once I decided I'm in this, I'm gonna show dogs and I want to I want to pick out a puppy or find something that I think is show quality that I can take to a championship. And then you start looking around. And some of the things that you mentioned about where that could be confusing to somebody is you were talking about registrations. So some of the breeders out there, they'll do something where they'll say, this is to a pet home. Well, what they mean by that is why
Limited.
don't right. So explain that a little bit. When a breeder says this is to a pet home, there's things that come with that. It doesn't just mean you're not going to show this dog, you have to have it as a pet, blah blah blah. What does it mean when they say this is for a pet?
So, all right. So when you're talking about a pet or companion home, you're offering that limited registration. That means the dog is fully registered and it's DNA'd to its pedigree. It's event eligible, but it cannot be used for breeding. Puppies cannot be registered from it or to it. So when they're talking about a pet, you're getting just that animal. There's no breeding, registering at puppies from that dog. So that's where you want to know up front. Well, I don't want to breed. Well, then limited registration is just fine for me. I'm happy with that. That's great. You know, that's not, I don't need a breeding dog, or I don't intend to breed dogs. That's fine. I can still do obedience. I can still do performance. I can still hunt it. I can do all of these things, just not show, just not breed. Show in the breeding dog classes. The
So
big
confirmation.
the confirmation classes, exactly. So that's right. And you want to make sure that when people talk about register, if you say, well, puppies are registered, yes, they're registered. Are they AKC registered? Because a lot of dogs that would not be AKC registered, they may be one of those other registries. Which, I mean, I'm not saying those aren't real registries, but they're not. You can't breed and show dogs into AKC unless it's an AKC dog. And so that's kind of an important thing. And you're also hopefully getting a little bit better quality, a little bit more documentable past. I mean, if you have a size or a color or something about a dog that you really want, well, when I tell you that this puppy is from this father and this mother, you're not just taking my word for it. It's in blood. It's DNA'd. I can prove it to you. And so anything less than that is only as good as the paper it's printed on.
So what happens? So say that I'm looking for a pet. I don't have intention to do confirmation, and so I find a breeder and they do a limited registration, and something happens and the dog has a litter of puppies. Not intended, just something happens. What happens
happens
in
all
that
the time.
scenario? You can't register them with AKC, or what's the process from there?
Right. Those dogs are not eligible for registration with the American Kennel Club unless you can get the breeder of the limited paper to change their mind. Odds are they're not going to. If they had wanted that, their odds are they're not going to feel you were truthful in your representation of the dog that you got. So probably not going to get papers on that. That would be a kind of a far reach. I'll tell you that, like when we were talking about online, there are a lot of when you go to look online, and of course we mentioned Craigslist and a bunch of those other stuff on there. There is a huge potential for scamming, but also all of the keywords. So if you're saying Japanese chin puppy, Denver, Colorado, Japanese chin puppy, Las Vegas, Nevada, or Dallas, Texas, those are all will go to the same search engine, because today's new pet shop, they will buy all the keywords. And so when you Google your breed for sale, it's going to funnel it all to an operator. And these businesses, what they do is they let people consign with them, and then they funnel in the calls. They'll take the purchase price. They'll do everything. You won't get to talk to the breeder until after you've paid for the dog or that type of a thing. It's kind of it's a brokerage of sorts, and that's super common online. They used to have what they call Buy Puppies Direct and several other ones. And they change their names periodically to lose the bad reviews, right? You don't like your reviews, change your name. You have a clean slate. But so when you go and see that, there's a lot of that. You aren't talking to someone unless you can, so if you go on the American Kennel Club and you see that they're listed as a breeder of merit or something like that, you can go find that person on the AKC website. They should show up. Before you send money or do a dealing with someone, demand that you speak to them at least once. And you need to, and if you can have because you really need to be able to do a little bit of a Google search on this person, make sure that this is legitimate. I think we were talking last week a little bit about how pictures get stolen off of social media all the time. And I've had dogs that were born in the 90s offered for sale on websites on the internet. And it's like they're just pirated pictures that people are selling. So you really need to call and talk to that person. You should always do a payment. I wouldn't send money to anybody unless I could do it with a credit card, or do it some way where, that if I had some sort of verification that if I didn't get my dog, I could contest the payment. Those kind of things, especially if you like have a friend, or you can get in with a kennel club, they can give you a reference of someone that is legitimate, that is like a real live person that you can deal with. I mean, because everybody knows somebody, and maybe ask, it's kind of hard to ask for references, but you could ask for a veterinarian's reference or that type of thing, something to verify that these people actually do exist before you just spent thousands of dollars off on some sort of unsecured way and got nothing.
Yeah, and I think this is one of those areas where there's a huge opportunity that is there for somebody to. One of the things that I go through, or I have been through, is so AKC has a marketplace, and you can go to AKC marketplace and you can type in your breed, you can type in a distance, you can hit search, and I do recommend everybody start there, because what you're going to find on AKC marketplace is you're going to find the reputable breeders, or you're going to find people who have been reputable breeders. And I say that with a little bit of a smirk, because it seems like when you go on AKC marketplace and you find, maybe an ad for a puppy, and you're like, oh, I'm going to email them. Most of the time they don't respond, it seems like, or sometimes they'll have links to their website and it'll be broken. And so that's one of the issues that I've come across, is like, I found some chins that I'm like, oh, I'm interested in this, I'm going to reach out, never get a response. Or they say, I don't have any puppies for sale. Well, you have an ad on the marketplace. So to me, that doesn't make sense. And to the average person that's going to go there, it doesn't make sense, right?
All right, so this is where breeders could kind of take a little note, because they kind of like the people in the show world, they they don't like it very much when you talk about pet stores and that kind of thing. But the average consumer enjoys the pet shop experience because they're available, they're polite, they have hours. I mean, they're very I mean, they're not going to disappear. They have a contract. You see what you get. Who you can talk to these people. All of this. Whereas, like, a lot of times people go, "Well, I have puppies right now. I'll return my inquiries, but I don't have puppies now. I'm just not even going to respond." That kind of thing. And I think that we as breeders, in order to kind of keep the if we don't have anything, that's fine, but maybe give them a referral to someone that does. Kind of say, well, I don't have anything right now, I don't have what you're looking for. Take 2 whole seconds and say, but here, contact this person. If nothing more, then your breed referral for your parent club. I mean, just send them somewhere where they can actually get, because back in the olden days, we would take waiting lists, you know, and if someone would call and say, "Oh, Mr. Wald, I'd like to get a puppy from you in the spring, if you have, and you'd write my name and number down, and then when Susie Bell had her puppies, you'd call me back. Okay, that went out with popcorn ceilings. Nobody's going to wait anymore. That has done. Now it's called, oh, you don't have anything? Click next. How about you? I mean, there is no waiting. We're an instant gratification society now, and we can get on, and we can find what we're looking for in any kind of a purchase, probably anything that you might be wanting, if you persevere and just look a little bit, And
Thanks,
if you
Amazon.
go to the bar, you can whatever you want, you can find.
Yeah, we got to thank Amazon for that, because that's what it is. We've turned into a we want it now situation. People aren't going to wait, and I'm just as guilty as anybody else.
Me too. Me too.
It's nice when you can get something delivered in 2 days, but
Absolutely.
so I think there is, and that brings up a topic for a future podcast that we've talked about as a breeder or somebody that once you have puppies, how do you market them? How do you get them out there? Because it's not super easy to find. I think there's a huge gap. I mean, like I said, a lot of breeders don't respond if they don't have anything.
Sure.
And then also, you go to Parent Club sites, Japanese Chin Club of America, whatever your breed is, club, and you look for breeders on there, and they have broken websites or things like that. It's hard to find reputable people. But then when you do, they like to ask a lot of questions, right? I think that makes common sense. You're giving out something, you've hand raised this puppy, you're giving it to a complete stranger. So what are the types of questions that are legit that breeders would ask? And then what are a couple questions that it's like, if they ask me that seem a little scammy, and maybe you should be a little skeptical of?
Okay. So the breeder, I mean, some people go ahead and do questionnaires and all that. I like to talk to people, and I just, it's like I don't want it to be like an interrogation, but I like to say, tell me about your past pets. And I'm going to find out, did you keep your past pet this whole life? Did you have a breed? How much grooming did the breeds you have do? Did you have good experiences with this? I mean, you can find out a lot about the people you have if you just talk about their past pets and their experiences, because everybody has experiences, good and bad. The next thing I want to talk to them about is, what's your expectations? What do you how because almost any situation can be made to work for a puppy. So like if someone works from home, well, wow, you can have anything. Take it home on a bottle type of thing, because you've got time. If you work out of the house, well, then you might want to get a little older puppy that you can put out in the morning and it'll be fine till you get back home, or that type of thing. Or you might have a pet door, or there's anything can work with planning, but you have to go ahead and say, hey, this is my breed. It's going to have to be fed this often. It's going to have to go to the bathroom this often. It's this is how far it is on its potty training. This is the care it needs. And so you make sure that you have that meeting of the minds where they know what they want, because sometimes you have to protect people from themselves. I mean, you go, oh my God, that's so cute, I want it. And then you get it and you go, oh, I got it. I mean, you be careful what you wish for, because you really need to know exactly what you're getting into. I think a lot of times people, especially large breed puppies, or highly active puppies, now they're going to need to have a training program in place, because like small dog people like you and I, super lazy. Our dogs are acting up, like the one that was just climbing over your shoulder. You pick it up and you put it off. Okay, there you go. We handled the situation. Slightly different thing if that was, say, a German Shepherd that just climbed over you. So if you have that kind of a breed, then you need to say, all right, 12 weeks old, you need to be in this training program. You're in this area. Let me get you some such and such, so that this works out. Because when you are somebody's breeder, or when you are purchasing a dog from someone, you have an ongoing relationship. And most reputable, ethical breeders, they want to hear from their puppy people, and they want to hear good. And if they're having a challenge, call me. Call me and let me see if I can help you. Let me see if I can say, oh, well, that's this. Don't do that. Don't change that food. Don't whatever. Don't call me after we're like bottomed out. Call me before we get to that point so we can talk about it and kind of get back on track. And that's something as a breeder, you kind of get a skill set to see how capable are these people? What's their situation? How many little kids do they have? How old are they? How fit are they? What can they do? What would be a good fit for them? And what's going to be a terrible disaster? And it's like, even though they're going to agree to it, it's going to go badly. They're not going to end up being able to keep the dog. That's been probably the biggest complaint of, say, the pet stores, is they don't really vet people. Any sale's a good sale, and they figure, well, you'll figure it out. Well, sometimes that doesn't go so good, So we're breeders, actually, we're vested into our dogs, and we want to see it go well, and we want to make sure that in advance what you need to do, what you're going to be expected to do, and kind of get that feeling in there where you are.
Yeah. And so those are all good things. I say I'm in the market for a puppy because I have been, and I've contacted breeders. I've asked questions, and the breeder tells you no. Why do breeders tell somebody no? I've been told no, and I don't
I've been told
necessarily
no.
know why.
I deal with rejection well. I get told no all the time. And so sometimes you go ahead, they will just go ahead. Like, let's say if I have, like, someone wants a female puppy and they're going to get a breeding show dog for me, and I think to myself, they don't have enough whelping experience. My female is going to be really small, and I need to have someone that has experience. They need to have a repo vet. They need to have experience with this. They're going to probably have to plan for a cesarean section. They need to have the tools, the skill set to make this go well. Whereas, like, if you got someone that's a new person, they're wanting a breeding dog, maybe you get something that you think is going to be a little more productive. That's going to be an easier producing. You're kind of setting them up. So if you might not have what they want or what they need, even though they will take it, you might think that's not going to go well for them. You might, then of course, just like in everything else, there is the breeding and showing is a competition. I know we should all be like this, should all be like kumbaya, sitting in a circle, drinking a Coke, teaching the world to sing, but it's not. It's competition. We're competing for the same ribbons. We're competing for the same awards. We're competing for the same sales, where it's a competition. So, if somebody is involved with a competition and you may not, for no fault of their own, you might go, oh, no, I'm not dealing with them. That camp is a nightmare, and that's a problem. Sometimes, especially when pets are a little easier. Pets are a lower threshold of acceptable. As long as you feel like it's going to be cared for, they have an idea. It's not a total impulse sale. They know what it's going to take on. But when you go ahead and sign on the dotted line with someone for a breeding show dog, you are embarking on a 10-year journey with them. And sometimes you go, yeah, no, this is just not the love boat. We're not going to get along well. This is going to not be a good fit. They're not going to listen to me. And, there's degrees of control. And we'll get into this, hopefully on this contracts. That's where contracts and expectations are discussed in advance, because, some people are better with that than others. And, those are really important things. But if you either don't have what they want, you don't want to deal with them, or you feel as though that it's going to be a disappointment or a nightmare down the road, and you just don't want to go with it through that with them, because every dog you get will disappoint you on some level on a breeding show dog. I have, all these decades, I've never gotten a single dog that won everything that I had hoped it would win, had produced everything I had hoped it would produce, and then lived this fabulous double life expectancy with no health issues to pass away quietly in his sleep. No, it doesn't go that way. It's real world, just like with people. And there's going to be disappointments, and you have to be able to go with the good and the bad and be that person when it doesn't go well, because everybody's swell when it's going well. We're all happy and high-fiving when we're winning and it all goes great. But how are we to work with when it doesn't go so great? What's that like? Because that's the person you want to deal with. The person that is, when it goes really bad, is still a nice person, still someone that you go, oh, I'm so glad I'm working with them. And that's kind of hugely important.
Yeah, and a lot of that depends on, are you looking for a companion dog or a pet dog, or are you looking for a show dog? Because there's going to be different things that you're looking for in different relationships with the breeder. And
Exactly.
sometimes it's just a personality clash. I'm not the type of person that can just randomly call up somebody that I have never met before and just I'm more shy and reserved, so it takes a little bit, and sometimes that comes off weird. And then you're talking to a breeder who, uh, let's just we all have a little bit of our own crazy in us if we're dealing with this many dogs in the show world, and
Sure.
people all the time. There's a little bit of crazy, and sometimes as the buyer, as the consumer, you can speak too much, and sometimes you speak too much, and the buyer, the breeder, the seller can hear something that maybe they don't like, because as you mentioned, this is a competition, and the breeder's competition, they want to have a strong lineage, they want to have a great DNA and produce the best line that they can produce in their breed. And other breeders are competition to that. So if you were to say, well, I was talking with so and so over at so and so Cocker Spaniels, and these two breeders, maybe they compete with each other to put out uh, the stronger lineage, or maybe they have a history. So name dropping, things like that, could get a breeder to just say, if you have a
Well,
lineage
they'll
from
be
this line, I don't want that.
Yeah. If they think that you've called everybody and they're the last house on the block, you've already offended them. If they feel like, okay, I've asked every other person I could find on the web and nobody else, how about you? Well, that's kind of a closing time relationship, and that's probably not going to go over very well. That's right there. And then if you complain about other breeders, they think about, oh well, you're a problematic person. Or if you go ahead and not even intending to say, I really want a super healthy dog. It's really important to me. I really want da da da. Well, that's kind of almost implying you don't think I do. You think I'm hoping that they're not going to be super healthy? Of course, we all want them to be super. Even people who aren't the best of the best, they want healthy dogs. They might not get them, but they're so see, people can offend without even meaning to offend. So in some sort of a way, I think in a little bit of a way, you kind of need to go ahead when you're inquiring. You need to know a little bit. Don't send out a blanket email to 35 people and tag all of them on one. That's not cool. That's going to get immediately deleted by 96%. And maybe a bot will respond. But nobody's going to respond to that. So make an individual inquiry to one person. Then take 2 whole minutes and go research them a little bit. Check out, see if they have social media. Check out and see if they have a website of any kind. Check out to see if they're a parent club member. Read their bio on the marketplace ad and say, hey, Tyson, I see you're a member of the parent club and that you show your dogs and your dogs are beautiful. What would you have that might be a good companion for my family? And that kind of like started out like, I know you. I actually know your name because I took an extra 2 seconds to look at it. I know that you show. I know that you joined a club. I've put a little, it's not just like a total, like in the store pointing and grunting, I've taken a second to kind of go into that. And then I've asked you, what do you think? You're the professional. Tell me what you think. You're the one with these dogs. I far prefer if I go ahead and hold two puppies up and go, which one do you like? And they go, that one. Well, all right. Hey, you've absolved me of any kind of, I don't have to, all right, you like it. Fine. But if you say, what do you think, Dale? Oh, geez. Okay. Now I have to go ahead and I have to give you this one seems a little quieter, doesn't seem to be quite as such and such. If you've got little kids, this one right here has got a little more gregarious temperament. This one's going to be, you're wanting something that'll fit under the seat of the plane. So this one's a little smaller, has a little finer bone. I'm going to go deeper for you if you make it my responsibility to help you. But if you just come in there with your laundry list and you read me the whole standard and then say, hey, is it going to be perfectly healthy for all of these things for the next 10 to 15 years? I'm going to go, here's the sales and healthcare T contract. This is what I have. You decide. I mean, that kind of thing. So you get what you get what you give. If you take a minute and actually talk to people and make a thoughtful inquiry, try not to start out with how much. Maybe just take a moment and say, I've had this experience. I've had dogs my whole life. I've had this and this. I've done such and such. This is what I'm hoping for. I see that you have this, that kind of thing, and kind of give a little bit in there where you start a relationship, a little back and forth, because it gets a little transactional and people get burned out. And when you get I've had up to 30 inquiries in a day, and it's hard to really pour yourself into each and every one of those. And so, I mean, a little bit where you kind of I make a couple hurdles for them. I'll go ahead and I'll respond back and I'll say I'll thank them and I'll say, call me. And if they will call me, then I'll go the next step, But if they're not going to call me, then I probably am not going to respond back beyond that initial, that. And I do even appreciate some people I put prices on my website because I want you to know. I want you to know if this is in your price range, I throw that out there right up front. Because if this is not what you can afford, if this is then I shouldn't, that's awkward for people. I think it's better if you share it up front. A lot of people won't. They'll have to they'll have to have 5 communications before they'll finally let loose with how much they actually want for it. And I think that's harder for people, especially, when they don't know them. And it's if they're a little bit I feel I don't want to come to your house unless I know how much I'm going to be expected to pay for this animal.
Well, and it's a waste of time too, right? Like if you sell dogs for $3,000 and this person only can spend $2,000 and you guys spend days and hours going back and forth via email, returning calls, talking all the things, and it turns out, okay, it's $3,000. Oh, well, I don't have 3,000. I was only going to spend 2,000. You just wasted both people's times.
Absolutely.
You talked about
a good thing to have up front.
Yeah, 100%. I totally agree. And it's a good thing as a consumer to know too, because I don't want to waste my time when I'm looking for something. I don't want it to be, well, come over and take a look at it in person, and then you get there and it's like, well, yeah, if you're interested, 5,000. It's like, well, I would have never even came over if I knew it cost that much, because I don't have that much, or I don't want to spend that much, or I don't value it at that price, or whatever the result might be. It's just a waste of time for everybody. But
well, I think when you, as a consumer, also you need to know what the price range is. Whether I'm looking at buying property in this state, in this town, versus, I mean, there's going to be a little variance. Like animals on the coast are a little higher. You're going to pay a little bit more. Maybe middle America, you might get a little cheaper prices, but you're going to pay a little bit more transportation. So it might be it'll equal out, but you should know, okay, if I'm going to get a show quality Japanese chin, for example, if I see it advertised on somewhere on the internet, on one of the pet sites or whatever, and they have it in there for $600, that's probably pretty safe to say a scam. You're not, you might get, there might be a variance of $1,000 either way, but you should kind of know before you inquire about what are you looking at. Because this is what this costs. And if you see something dramatically cheaper than that, it's probably not real. So that's right off the top. Cheaper, and it should be apples for apples. So you might even say, well, this is a registered dog, but this is a registered dog of quality. This has been more selectively. This is like 1 degree of quality. It's got 4 legs, a head, and a tail. The quality is this much better. This is, and find out where you are. How important is that? Because a lot of people that especially want a purebred dog, they want the aesthetics of that purebred dog. They want the things that go, oh, I like a Maltese. I want it to have long, white, beautiful, silky hair. If it is covered in lemon spots and the hair is frizzy, that might not be the picture in my mind of the Maltese that I want, or a Japanese Chin. If it has a solid white head, I might not like that. So kind of know what what your criteria is, what you want. Pick out 3 things. I want this size. I'd like this sex. I'd like this color. That's real. That's reasonable, and kind of just throw that in there. And I don't mind it when people are being superficial either, because, you don't need a dog. You want a dog. So get what you want. It's one of the few times in life you actually can, be a little bit patient, and you decide, is it more important I get it tomorrow, or is it more important I get the female of this size and color that I want? I might have to wait 4 to 6 months, to get exactly what I want. But if it's truly what you want, you won't mind waiting.
And I can hear people asking now and typing in the comments when they're listening to this of why are dogs cheaper on the in the Midwest than on the coast?
Okay.
You want to speak
sure.
to that?
Well, absolutely. 100%. So in the Midwest and stuff, we have much more open space as far as legislation and kennel restrictions. Very difficult. Try to get a kennel license to breed dogs, in New York City. Get one in Los Angeles. All of that. That's very, very difficult to get area where you can have. Like I have 50 acres, and I'm fairly near Dallas, but I have room for my dogs. So to have that same property somewhere coastal would cost way more. So there's that right off the top. Then the next thing is veterinary costs. Veterinarian costs, you can pay, like in my area here in Texoma, you can go ahead and get a dog neutered for, say, less than $100 at some of the clinics. Some of the better clinics might be $150 to $200. You could go down to Dallas and you could pay $600 to have that dog neutered, all within a 2-hour range. But like a lot of those coastal veterinarian costs, a cesarean section on the West Coast could easily be over $3,000. And in the Midwest could easily be under 500. So all of those those factors come into how much does it cost you to keep your dogs, to maintain your dogs, to breed your dogs. Sure, your registration costs are the same, but as far as like whether or not you're going, showing might cost. I've been to some dog shows where the parking was $30 a day. I've been to some dog shows where it was no charge for parking. Just pull on in. So all of those things figure into your expenses as to what it costs you to have it. And so you will have regional areas where there'll be differences of prices. It's totally normal. Like any kind of real estate.
Yeah, and that makes sense. I think it partly goes into just land mass versus population as well, too. When you have a state like South Dakota where you have huge land mass, but not a lot of people here, you're less likely. The demand is lower than, say, somewhere where there's a million people. It's a supply and demand issue. And now, thankfully, we're in the world of nannies and being able to have animals shipped.
Transported. Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Because
So
if you had a bunch of puppies in Rapid City, you could overbreed your market easily in Rapid City.
yes.
You could, whereas if you were located outside Dallas, Texas, you'd have a very different demographic. Those prices are going to be higher closer, and it's going to cost you more probably, but you're going to have a higher demand. A lot of the breeders back in the day, like in those, they would take the dogs back to the pet stores in Chicago and places to the populace where people would want them. Now it's we do ground transport or air travel or all that. So that those are all factors that come into when you get a dog. And when you buy something, you will save money. And sometimes you can get a better animal for less, oftentimes, but you're going to pay the price of transport. And if it for some reason isn't what you want, it's incumbent on the buyer to return. It's just like, it's like there is no free shipping. It's not Amazon. If you want it and I send it to you 5 states away, and you don't want it and I want to refund it, but you're going to have to get it back to me. Because that's on you.
And a lot of times the shipping there is on you too. So let's
Um,
two more topics and then we'll wrap this episode up. So topic that we're just diving into right now, and then we'll end it with contracts. But so let's talk about transportation. When I first was looking for a puppy and it was, yeah, my flight nanny this, and I took it right away because I didn't do my homework. I took it, whoa, this is a scam. There's no such thing as flight nannies. This sounds skeptical. You just want another $700 out of me or whatever it is. But turns out there is actually flight nannies, and I have utilized one before as well. So I have a little bit of experience with it. But as a first time, as somebody that is maybe buying a puppy from a breeder or buying a puppy online, and the term flight nanny comes up or pet transport, what are some things that people can ask or dig into to actually find out if this is a legit or if it's a scam as far as flight nanny? Is there any way to really know that like this is a legit thing, or is it kind of
okay.
just trusting the breeder that's selling the puppy?
All right. So part of this, you've got your basic forms of transport. You have ground transport. You can go ahead, and there are some very good, ground to ground transports. People that drive, across the country, and you can get on the school bus if you have a breed that is substantial enough to withstand a day or two of travel. Then that could work out good. You would want to make sure that it was a dog that was going to be old enough, big enough, going to be able to do the travel with that kind of thing. Because like toy breeds, say Japanese Chin, wow, they would have to be considerably older, and they'd have to be going directly from point A to point B before I would do a ground transport. I would also, through the dog show world, there's a lot of people who are involved in show dogs and stuff. They will do transport. All of that and that is usually a pretty reasonable thing. But ground transport can be good depending and you should get some referrals, talk to them, get a good vibe, see if they have, if they have like a Facebook page. There's some really good people out there that really do that. Then air travel. That's the most common. That's the best in many cases. We used to send the dogs cargo or dash or priority, and some breeds can still be sent like this, and that's great. I mean, if you've got labs, you can go ahead and that book them on a flight. Probably less than $500. They take them to the airport. They'll put them on the flight. You wait and see, make sure the flight leaves on time. They pick them up, easy breezy. The more delicate your breed is, the harder that becomes because they're not in 100%. So like when toy dogs or young puppies, that's where the nanny comes in, because that's the person, like if the flight gets canceled, weather comes up, whatever happens, you have some person that's going to keep the dog from overheating, going to not let the dog go down in hypoglycemia. You have a person there that's going to take care of the puppy if anything goes wrong in travel. And, you know, a lot of times people will want to go ahead and say, hey, I have Sky Miles. You know, everybody has that loser friend that's available that could go ahead and fly out for the weekend, just buy them the ticket and send them that off there. They're not doing anything anyway. But if you want to go ahead and get a nanny, if your breeder has worked with it, I would always say, how long have you worked with this nanny? Tyson, do you like this nanny? Are you pretty dependable? You like him? You've worked with him? I put it on you because you're the breeder. Tell me, you know, I would want someone that the breeder had worked with before, like the nanny that I've used now. I've used for like 5-6 years, and wonderful, wonderful. I highly recommend. Great person. You know, I've worked with a couple that were, but their degrees are good, and so that's where you get with your breeder, and they can find someone that's good. So there's a couple of different ways that the nannies work. Some of them used to be at one point in time people that had flight privileges that were flying for free would just bootleg the dogs on the plane, and so they were profiting 100%. The airlines have cracked down on that. And that is not you. That's a good way to lose your flight privileges. Or if you're an airline employee, that's a good way to get fired. So that's kind of can go that way. But so sometimes what they do is people that fly will go ahead and they'll shop around and they'll buy a one-way ticket with your dog, and they'll find the cheapest, best flight. And I don't like to do standby, because the whole concept of flying standby is, it's cheaper, true. You may or may not get on that flight. So if I have to be 2 hours down the airport to meet a nanny and they didn't get on their flight, and their flight might not be 2 hours, that could be a problem. So the nannies that will go ahead and buy the direct tickets on the legs of the flight and pay for the dog, because there's usually like $100 carry-on fee that the airline will charge, then they'll usually use their flight privileges or their discount things to fly back. All legal. Technicality, maybe it'll change, but that's how the good ones do it now. They can even have, some of the nannies will even have like a USDA, which really doesn't mean anything, but it means that they've licensed themselves as animal transport and that kind of thing. But I mean, it shows effort so that they're attempting to be credible. But that all of that is kind of good, but you really do need to delve deep, find out, are you flying standby? Because if you're going to drive over to Denver to pick up a puppy, you're going to be unhappy if you've been on the road for 2.5, 3 hours and they go, oh, hey, Tyson, didn't get on that flight out of Salt Lake. We're going to do it tomorrow. That kind of stuff will make you very unhappy. So those are where you need to like find it out, and then it's customary for the nannies to charge in advance, because if you want me to book the tickets, if you want me to do that, then that's on you. And if you change your mind later and decide, I really wanted a green one and this is only a purple one, I mean, that's a you problem. That's not their problem. So, I mean, when you contract with them, you should be prepared to pay them, and so get on there. And the good nannies is going to be somewhere between as quick as a week, as long as 3 weeks to 4 weeks to get to your airport, because the more legs they have to make in the journey, the bigger the flight is. Like I have a dog, my nanny's going to Portland, and then from Portland over to Pensacola, and then back to Dallas. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good jaunt, Those are more expensive flights. Sometimes they're going to be more pricey if they have to go into somewhere weird or somewhere where they've got like not very many options to get back out, because nobody wants to fly in somewhere and get stuck there for a day and a night,
Like South Dakota. Yeah.
Anything with involving South Dakota. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Call my parents. They have a guest room. Yeah. It's that kind of thing, it's you really do need to, those all figure into your prices.
So flight nannies, regular nannies, pet nannies, they're a thing. So again, do your due diligence. You should be able to they're not that I'm going to recommend certain websites, but there's websites out there for flight nannies. There's websites out there where you can actually put in what you need done and nannies will bid on it.
Yes.
And then, but I would start with your breeder. Who you buying the dog from? Ask for their recommendations about it. If they've never, had a flight nanny, then you're kind of on your own to do some legwork. Really not that hard. If like you mentioned earlier with puppy prices, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. You're probably not going to get a flight nanny for under $500 because they got to pay for transportation and they got to make
Airport
money at the
parking.
same time. So you're looking a lot of times, depending on how far, but $500 to $1,000. It just depends on how far they're traveling, right?
600 to $1,000 is the norm. That's what you're gonna look at to spend for is the norm. Sometimes you get two, they'll cut you a break. Sometimes they put two babies in a bag, that type of thing. You know, but yeah, that's a. It's not I find it to be reasonable, a reasonable price.
I did too. I think when you go in and you look at it and say, I'm going to get a flight nanny. They're going to leave their location today. They're going to fly here, drop off a puppy, turn around, fly back home. Maybe they'll be home the same day, or maybe it'll end up being tomorrow. But when you think about it and you look at just go on and get yourself like flight tickets from Rapid City to Dallas, and then add the $100 dog fee. Really, they're not making that much money for their time that they're spending doing it. There's a little bit of passion in there, I would assume, because I mean, if you can get it for $700 and tickets, round trip plus a dog fee is 500-600. I mean, think about what they're going through for a $200 profit. I mean,
What if they want to get a $12 Coke in the airport? You
yeah.
know, I mean, there's no part of it's cheap. I mean, but the ones that do it a lot more, they've figured their costs out. They know the days that they can get the cheaper tickets. They know where they can get the cheaper parking, and they know they can pick and choose. And they might say, hey, you can't go. This airport's hard, but you can go 40 miles over to this over here, and I can do better flights onto that type of thing. And a lot
And
of
then they
that.
get air miles built up too. So I would assume, they can get cheaper prices because they can use miles and cash and then get more miles out of it. Like they have their ways, but don't be alarmed. If you're $600,000 to have a dog delivered, which really isn't that bad when you think about it. It's just something again to think about when you're not buying a dog local or somewhere that you can drive to.
Well, when you're shopping off of the world's shelves, when you're picking something that's not in your town, then you have a bigger variety, and you have maybe a better selection, maybe better things that you can get, but you're going to pay for that a little bit. And that doesn't even get into the part, and I imagine we'll talk about this later, about importing and stuff, where we take our show outside of the country. These are all one thing that's kind of a little bit of a savings when you go ahead and fly with a dog either as a pet nanny or as an individual using your miles. You're not required to have an interstate health certificate, a travel certificate. So that will save you, 50, $100. Whereas if you shipped that dog, you'd have to have the interstate. But if it's traveling with a person, they don't require it.
Good info there. Let's wrap this episode up by talking about contracts and health guarantees. So, my question to you on this would be, what should somebody look for in a health guarantee from a breeder if they should? Should breeders offer a health guarantee? And if they do, what's it look like? Should I expect one as a consumer? And then what does a puppy contract look like? What am I signing? What am I getting myself into when I'm getting a puppy contract from a reputable breeder?
Okay, that's a really good question, and we'll go as far, and if we get questions in on this more, we can do a deeper dive on this later. But the contract is super important. So, the contract is really memorializing everything in our dealing in writing. And it's more about what the breeder is going to do or the seller is going to do more so than what the buyer. Because you want to make sure that you go ahead and that you're doing a contract that is enforceable, and be relevant to what you're selling. So like my contract, anybody wants to go and take a look at my contract to use it for ideas, go cavaliersofcastlemar.com. On the bottom, click on it. We go ahead and we talk about what our state requires for viral health. We talk about what we guarantee. We more importantly talk about what we won't guarantee. We tell exactly the type of registration you're going to get, whether it's going to have shots and microchip, whatever our course of remedy. If you have a complaint or you have an issue, this is what we will do. And we're going to say this in advance up front. These are things that we'll guarantee. Like we have on ours, we guarantee 1 year against a life-threatening congenital defect. So if it was something that will affect that dog's longevity, then we would cover that in our guarantee. But if it was something that was like a parasite or something that, a hernia that's really not a life-threatening defect, we're not going to guarantee against that. Now, I mean, and there's all of that is kind of like you should need to kind of be aware of what you're getting and what you want. People say, "Oh my gosh, it has a hernia." Most toy breed puppies will have a belly button hernia or what's called an umbilical hernia. No big deal. You can show them with it. You can breed them with it. If you're going to have them as a pet, you can when you have them spayed or neutered, if it hasn't gone away by the time they're 8 months, you can nip it out. It's no big deal. Doesn't cost that much more. And it's not going to make the dog live a day longer or a day shorter. No big deal. Now, whereas like an inguinal hernia, that would be something that would disqualify it from the showing and breeding aspect. Still could be a good pet. Slightly more invasive surgery. You probably, but still a good pet. It's not going to affect its life, is the length of its life or the quality of its health. These are just little things that you need to know. And, so you can kind of like be in accordance to that. You need to spell out the shots that are given, the shots that the owner is supposed to give. If something should go wrong, what we're willing to do, what we won't do. All of that should be in your contract. Like your contract should include your county of residence. Any disputes are going to be settled in your county of residence. All of that is in your contract up front. So, because like I said, everybody is fabulous when it starts out. When there's a problem, we need to have these things said about up front. That's like whenever in another topic for another podcast, co-ownerships. Nightmare, horrible idea, the best way to get a new enemy, because you couldn't possibly spell out all the things that can and will happen and the situations that will fall upon you, when you have this little puppy in your hands. Like, oh, I have no idea how this is all going to go, but somebody's going to end up doing 90% and someone's going to do 10%, and someone's could end up being resentful down the road. So know these things up front and really kind of read your contract, see what the breeder's offering, what they're going to do, and like, do I guarantee you that it's going to be this many pounds? No. Do I guarantee you that it's going to such and such? Mine spells it all out there. I guarantee you what the health things. I guarantee the registration is going to come, that microchipping is going to come. That they're going to embody the sentient traits of the breed. But just kind of spell out a thing. If you're talking about a breeding show dog, then that's a deeper contract, because that's a whole another venue of requirements that this dog has as to whether it's going to be a show dog. But we're talking right now just basically about a companion or a pet. We're talking about health. We're talking about, longevity and the terms and conditions of your sale. That's one thing that the pet stores have really well, is they spell it all out. It's right that they have a really good contract and they say, we're going to do this, this, and this. Breeders can sometimes be really sloppy on that. And it's, because they don't do it often enough. And so then they kind of get that, and they kind of, oh, we'll take care of it. So, and then when they get into it and say, oh, well, you sold that puppy to somebody out in California and they're going to spend $3,500 in just the, spay, neuter, and hernia repair. I mean, they could spend a lot of money on that. And you go, oh, well, I had no idea. So all of these things you just really need to know upfront in advance before you do the deal. And even to the point of like, and sometimes people get a little funny about this. We take deposits. If someone wants a puppy before it's ready to go, we'll go ahead and we'll take a deposit. So are the deposits refundable? Yes, but if you do that, we're not going to deal with you on the next time. You're done. But some people will say no, deposits are not refundable. And you've tied up my puppy. I'm more like, you kept somebody else from getting that puppy. So if someone says, "Oh, is it refundable?" I said, I don't think you're ready to commit. I mean, when they're saying is it refundable, I'm going, when you see the puppy that you don't want your deposit back on, let me know. And but that kind of a thing where you need to know. And then like I go ahead, if I take a deposit, I tell people I'm going to send you updated pictures every 2 weeks. Don't call me every morning and say, what's my puppy doing? Is my puppy having a good day? Did my puppy
Let me watch it eat and poop, put a webcam on it.
Yeah, no. I get it. I'm terrible. I get very excited too. And, but you say it up front. Every 2 weeks, I'm going to take pictures and make a video for you. I mean, but if you put that in there up front, you can take the puppy at approximately 10 weeks or whatever your breed appropriate age of your puppy going. So like on a toy breed puppy, I would never want a toy breed puppy before it was 10 weeks old or weighed 2 pounds. I think that's, if you're under 10 weeks or if you're less than 2 pounds, that's a puppy that could potentially be lost in the stress of travel and all that. Some breeds are, most breeds have to be by state law a minimum of 8 weeks to get, but that needs to be situated in there too. Like, how long are you going to keep this puppy? Like I keep mine, I say they can be picked up at 10 weeks. I don't charge anything additional to keep them an extra month. So anytime in that next month, after that month, I'm going to charge you board. But that kind of thing. These are just little fun facts that up front, that you can kind of go into, and the more thought you put into that and the more professionalism, it'll go smoother because everybody knows where the page everyone else is on. We're all agreed to this up front before we set sail. I'm not going to say situations don't change, but pretty much that written contract is very important.
Super important. And I think it's important on both sides of the fence, breeder and consumer, to, use some common sense, but also have some fine print in there. You mentioned something like a 1 year health guarantee. And, if that puppy were to, if you were to sell a puppy with a 1 year health guarantee and the puppy dies at 6 months and the person contacts you and says, hey, my puppy died, you're not just going to give them their money back because it's been under a year. We're going to need, vet proof. We're going to need to figure out why the puppy died, right? And that's going to be on the buyer. So that's something to think about as a buyer is, if something happens to that dog and you're going to go try to get the breeder to honor the health guarantee, you're going to foot the bill to prove that that's what happened to the dog. It's your responsibility to prove it to the breeder that that's what happened, that they're at fault realistically.
Well, and you have to, number one, verify that dog did indeed die. So that you're going to have to, you just can't call them up and say, oh, because I mean, they've got to show that it is deceased. And the part of that is also going to involve that your veterinary verification of this is going to include the puppy's microchip number. Not only is it going to be, not, it's going to be deceased. I want it to be my deceased puppy that I'm replacing. And all of that. And then you're going to have to go ahead and on my contract, if a puppy is lost due to hypoglycemia, We don't cover that. I don't consider that to be a genetic defect. It's operator error. Now, I'm going to go into a great deal of effort to tell you how to prevent it, how to work around it, how to identify it. But a breeder of toy breed dogs, that's a real thing, so we want to make sure that they don't go there. And we're going to do the follow up, especially for that first 2 weeks they have. Have a little I have a little call or text list. Like, okay, they got a puppy. I need to call or text them this many days afterwards to make sure that the puppy's eating, that everything's going well, because you have that window where you can turn things back around. And where people might not, they might be wonderfully great homes, super smart, but they might not have puppy sense. It's like, so that's the things that they need to be aware of. So all of that stuff is spelled out in your sales contract beforehand. So how they can go ahead, because nobody wants to we don't even want to talk about the bad stuff. It's
No.
like, it's like, you want to be dead for a week before the devil knows your name type thing. It's like, but you have to talk about it up front. You've got to have all the terms, everything about how, and like, I require my puppies to be paid for before they leave. That's, I mean, and I want to make sure they have to be paid for before they go. I'm not going
Breeders
to,
have to protect themselves too.
oh,
This isn't just
you don't
this
know who,
this isn't consumers protecting themselves from scams, but breeders have to protect themselves too. And one of the things that I really love, or that kind of hit me with your contract when I was looking it over, was the part at the bottom that says if you initiate a chargeback with PayPal, I don't have the exact wording, but you basically cover yourself to say if somebody were to say with PayPal that they didn't receive it or something, that it's null and void. I don't have the exact wording, but something that you thought about, and you thought about it because it's probably happened before, unfortunately. But
every line of a contract is a story. It,
yeah, and so it's like you have to protect yourself from that type of stuff too. And who's to say somebody doesn't get a puppy and then be like, "Well, I paid via PayPal. I'm going to put in a claim saying I didn't get what I got." And of course, they always decide with the buyer. So you have to have that type of stuff in a contract as a breeder.
Well, when you go pick up your laundry at the dry cleaners and they have put on there, it says you have your plastic bag, don't put this over your head. Somebody somewhere down the road thought, it would be great, put that plastic bag over your head. I mean, this is all the stuff we have to talk about in advance and to know, because we don't know. And part of the whole thing, like with the even what was kind of great about pet stores, is everybody kind of came into a mutual place. We had a public bathroom. We were all kind of there. When you talk about with the breeders, that's kind of like it's your home. You have the public coming into your home. You are advertising your private residence. And so I mean, there it is a little invasive on that, where you have to protect yourself. I mean, because there's all this stuff about consumer protection, which is good. I mean, because there's sketchy on both sides, but there is sketchy on both sides. The sellers need to be very aware of who they have coming to their home. Like, I wouldn't say that you probably wouldn't want your daughter to be at home and you had strangers coming to go look at puppies, because you don't know them. I mean, you would want to be there.
There's a reason that McDonald's coffee cup says "caution, it's hot." It's because at one point it didn't, and somebody sued him. And like there's a reason for these things, and I think that's a solid way to wrap up this episode, but also leave something for for future episodes. You mentioned buyers coming to your house and being protective. I think that's a fantastic topic to talk about, because there was just a breeder in Colorado who bred dogs. Somebody came to a house to look at a puppy, ended up coming back later and murdering the guy. And I mean, super tragic story, and probably doesn't happen nearly as often, but something to think about if you got kids. Or I mean, you're opening up your home, like you just said, to complete strangers that you know nothing about.
And,
And
and so many websites online, even sometimes our own beloved AKC will say, "Oh, well, go to your breeder's house, go check them out, go such and such." It's like, really? We want, really, we gotta have like a public venue, that, I mean, because that and that kind of a thing, there is certain kinds of steps of protection, and we're gonna talk about that too, because that's a really important thing, because we have these amazing dogs we're raising, and we want to share them with people, and we want to do it ethically, but we also want to do it safely. And that safety has changed over time. What was safe is no longer safe, either online or in person.
We have to adapt to the time that we're in, and we have to not only is the Tack Box podcast for people looking to get dogs, but it is all things dog. That's why it's called the Tack Box Podcast. So we want to talk to breeders, we want to talk about breeders, and we want to help breeders along the way as well. And that's why we have the knowledge of Dale over here, is to help everybody dog related. So we thank you for checking out this episode of the Tack Box Podcast. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast network. You can check out YouTube. We're uploading YouTube shorts almost every day, and the full episodes on YouTube as well, where you can see our smiling faces and our reactions as we record these podcasts. But also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and anywhere on social media to stay up to date. Ask us questions in our Facebook group so we can make an episode on answering your guys' questions. We appreciate each and every one of you, and we will talk to you guys again next week. See ya.
Bye.